Peppa's house always seemed like the safest place. But nobody suspected the dark secrets of the mysterious seashell. Granny Pig arrives with the mysterious smile. In her hands, a large seashell shimmers with strange light. Peppa joyfully claps her hands, receiving gift. The seashell seems ordinary, but something about it frightens. Granny carefully puts the seashell to ear. Ocean sounds fill the room with sinister whispers and echoes. The family gathers around the amazing find. Nobody notices the red pulsating light growing stronger. Daddy Pig takes the seashell and nods. In ocean sounds, there's strange laughter getting louder. Mummy Pig places the seashell on shelf. Red light becomes brighter every passing minute, dangerously. George touches the seashell with little hand. Sound transforms into sinister whispers of unknown language. Night falls peacefully. Family goes to sleep. The seashell glows bright red light alone in darkness. Midnight strikes on the old clock. The seashell cracks loudly. Terrible gurgling sounds emerge. A deep crack appears with loud crunch. Red light bursts out violently, illuminating living room. From cracked seashell emerges yellow hand. Sharp claws scratch wooden floor, leaving deep grooves. Evil SpongeBob climbs out completely from prison. Eyes burn with red fire, teeth became sharp fangs. Monster examines house with hungry expression. Sinister laughter echoes around, awakening terror in sleeping hearts. Peppa wakes up from strange sound. She quietly goes downstairs, not suspecting terrible danger. Evil SpongeBob turns with wide smile. Red glowing eyes hypnotize Little Pig, depriving will to resist. Monster extends hand toward Peppa obediently. Her eyes become completely empty. Smile disappears forever. Family wakes up without finding Peppa. They search entire house desperately, find only broken seashell. Evil SpongeBob stands with Peppa outside. Now she's his faithful servant with empty glassy eyes. Monster looks at house planning horrors. His collection of living puppets must be filled with victims. Red eyes glow menacingly in darkness. He waits patiently to take remaining family members. The house will never be same. Seashell was only beginning of horror consuming all who approach. Peppa Pig's bedroom always seemed like the safest place. But tonight something was terribly wrong beneath her bed. Strange scratching sounds echoed from under the frame. Peppa lay still, listening to mysterious noises below. The sounds grew louder each passing night. Something was definitely moving in the darkness. Peppa tried to ignore the disturbing sounds, but curiosity was stronger than her fear. Mummy Pig tucked Peppa into bed as usual. She didn't hear the eerie sounds underneath. The scratching became rhythmic, almost like a song. A twisted melody that made Peppa crawl. George slept peacefully in his room nearby. He remained unaware of the growing terror. Daddy Pig snored loudly downstairs in living room. His snoring masked the sinister sounds above. Peppa gathered courage to peek under the bed. Her heart pounded as she leaned over. Two glowing red eyes stared back at her. They belonged to something that shouldn't exist. A yellow square figure emerged from shadows. It had sharp teeth and terrifying grin. The creature introduced itself as SpongeBob with voice. But this wasn't the friendly character known. His laugh was mechanical and without warmth. It echoed through the room like machinery. SpongeBob's eyes never blinked once during encounter. They remained fixed on Peppa with intent. He beckoned Peppa to come closer to him. His smile grew wider, revealing sharp teeth. Peppa felt an irresistible urge to crawl underneath. Something was compelling her to move forward. The space under bed seemed impossibly deep. It stretched far beyond what seemed possible. SpongeBob's laughter grew louder as Peppa approached. The sound filled her head completely. Peppa crawled deeper into the dark space. The familiar bedroom disappeared behind her. The walls around her became wet and slimy. They pulsed like they were somehow alive. SpongeBob's voice whispered promises of endless fun, but his words felt cold and empty. Peppa realized she couldn't turn back anymore. The entrance had vanished without trace. Morning came and Mummy called for breakfast. But Peppa's bed remained completely empty. The family searched everywhere throughout the house, but Peppa was nowhere to found. Under the bed, only SpongeBob's laughter remained, waiting patiently for the next child. Peppa's house always seemed like the safest place in the world. But tonight, something sinister lurks behind the glowing screen. Peppa sits comfortably watching her favorite SpongeBob cartoon. The familiar yellow character dances happily on screen. Suddenly, the television screen begins to flicker strangely. SpongeBob's cheerful smile slowly transforms into something terrifying. Red eyes replace the innocent blue ones. Sharp teeth emerge where a gentle smile used to be. The evil SpongeBob presses against the screen from inside. Glass begins to crack under his supernatural pressure. With a horrifying crash, the monster breaks through. Evil SpongeBob emerges into Peppa's living room. Peppa screams in terror as the nightmare becomes reality. The creature towers over her with glowing red eyes. Evil SpongeBob's laugh echoes through the house menacingly. His sharp teeth gleam in the dim light. Mama Pig rushes downstairs, hearing Peppa's frightened cries. She freezes, seeing the terrifying yellow monster. The evil creature turns his attention to Mama Pig. His red eyes burn with malicious intent and hunger. Papa Pig appears but immediately backs away in horror. The family huddles together against the supernatural threat. Evil SpongeBob begins to grow larger and more threatening. His presence fills the entire room with darkness. The monster reaches out with twisted yellow hands. He wants to drag the family into his television world. Peppa tries to run but finds herself trapped. Evil SpongeBob blocks every escape route with supernatural speed. The creature opens a portal back to the television. Dark energy swirls around the glowing screen menacingly. One by one, family members are pulled toward the portal. They cannot resist the evil SpongeBob's supernatural power. Peppa watches helplessly as her parents disappear into the screen. She realizes she will be next victim. Evil SpongeBob grabs Peppa with his cold yellow hands. She feels herself being dragged toward the television portal. The living room becomes empty and silent once more. Only the flickering television remains as evidence. Inside the screen, the family is trapped forever. They can only watch as evil SpongeBob seeks new victims. The television turns itself on every night automatically. Evil SpongeBob waits patiently for unsuspecting children. His red eyes scan through the screen constantly. The monster searches for his next innocent victims. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place in the world. But beneath its foundation lay dark secrets that should never be uncovered. Strange sounds echoed from the basement every single night. The family heard dull thuds and mysterious scratching noises. Daddy Pig decided to investigate the source of sounds. He went down to the basement with his flashlight. Behind old dusty boxes, a hidden door was discovered. It was secured with a heavy rusty lock. Mummy Pig joined the search down below them. Together, they broke the old rusty lock completely. Behind the door opened a long, dark tunnel. The air was stale and freezing cold inside. The family slowly moved through the narrow passage. The walls were covered with strange green slime. At the tunnel's end was a small room. In the corner sat a yellow square figure. It was SpongeBob, chained to the cold wall. He looked sad and completely helpless there. SpongeBob begged to be freed from heavy chains. His voice sounded pitiful and very sincere. Peppa felt sorry for the imprisoned creature below. She asked her parents to help him escape. Daddy Pig broke the chains with his hammer. SpongeBob was finally set completely free from captivity. SpongeBob thanked the family with grateful tears. He seemed so kind and sweet and innocent. The family invited SpongeBob to live upstairs with them. He gladly agreed to stay in their home. The first days, SpongeBob behaved perfectly well always. He helped with chores and played with children. But gradually, something began changing inside him slowly. His smile became too unnaturally wide and strange. SpongeBob never slept during the night hours anymore. He just stood there and stared at them. His laughter became increasingly more mechanical sounding each day. There was no real joy in it anymore. Peppa noticed that his eyes were glowing strangely, red light in the complete darkness of night. Food in the house began disappearing mysteriously every morning. SpongeBob was always near the refrigerator watching. Family photographs changed their facial expressions slowly over time. All smiles became sinister and evil-looking. SpongeBob began whispering strange words at night hours. Nobody understood their dark and mysterious meaning. The house filled with creepy atmosphere of fear. Something was terribly wrong with everything around them. The family realized their terrible mistake too late. SpongeBob no longer hid his true nature. The forest always seemed like a safe place for Peppa's walks. But today, something felt terribly wrong. Strange glowing light pierced through the trees ahead. Peppa felt an unexplainable chill in the air. Curiosity overcame caution and growing fear inside her. Peppa slowly walked toward the light source. Behind a large oak tree, a glowing portal appeared. It pulsed with an ominous blue light. Familiar sounds echoed from the portal entrance. SpongeBob's laughter and friends' voices carried through. Peppa couldn't resist the overwhelming temptation to explore. She stepped directly into the glowing portal. The world on the other side looked familiar, but something was horribly wrong with everything. SpongeBob greeted her with a wide smile, but his eyes glowed with red light. Patrick stood nearby with an empty stare. His smile was too wide and creepy. All characters moved too slowly and mechanically. Their movements seemed unnatural and disturbing. SpongeBob offered Peppa to stay forever here. His voice sounded distorted and frightening. Peppa tried to return to the portal, but it had vanished without trace behind her. The sky grew darker with each passing minute. Stars turned into evil red eyes. Houses in Bikini Bottom looked completely destroyed. Windows glowed with ominous orange light. All town residents surrounded Peppa in circle. Their faces were twisted with evil grimaces. SpongeBob began laughing with mechanical laughter sound. The echo carried throughout the entire world. Peppa realized she was trapped in nightmare. This world was opposite of the real one. She tried to run away from crowd, but wherever she ran, they followed closely. Evil versions whispered strange words to her. Peppa couldn't understand their dark meaning. The world began slowly dissolving around her completely. Reality became increasingly more distorted. SpongeBob reached out his hand toward her. His fingers were sharp like razor blades. Peppa screamed and woke up at home, but a strange blue mark remained on her hand. She looked out window toward the forest. The ominous light still flickered there. The portal waited for her return patiently. SpongeBob smiled from the forest darkness. Peppa realized it wasn't just a dream. The evil world still called her back. The Pig family house always seemed like the safest place in the world. But today, something dark was stirring within its cheerful walls. George sits alone in his room, staring at Mr. Dinosaur. A strange whisper echoes in his mind. The voice speaks softly, calling George's name repeatedly. George looks around confused, seeing no one there. Peppa enters the room, noticing George's strange behavior. George appears distant and doesn't respond to her calls. The whisper grows stronger, telling George about a beautiful lake. George's eyes become glassy and unfocused. Mummy Pig calls everyone for lunch downstairs. George moves like he's in a trance. At the dinner table, George stares blankly ahead. The family exchanges worried glances about his silence. The voice in George's head becomes clearer now. It speaks of cool, peaceful waters waiting for him. George suddenly stands up and walks toward the door. Daddy Pig asks where he's going, but George doesn't answer. Outside, George walks past Grandpa Pig's garden. Grandpa notices the boy's strange, empty expression. The whisper guides George toward the old lake. His footsteps become mechanical and purposeful. Susie Sheep and Rebecca Rabbit see George walking alone. They call out, but he doesn't hear them. George reaches the edge of the dark lake. The water reflects his pale, emotionless face. The voice becomes urgent, commanding George to enter the water. George takes his first step forward. Peppa arrives at the lake, calling George's name desperately. But George seems completely under the voice's control. The whisper promises George eternal peace beneath the waves. George's eyes turn completely black. Mummy and Daddy Pig arrive, shouting for George to stop. But the voice drowns out their calls. George takes another step into the cold water. The lake seems to pull him deeper. The family reaches the water's edge, but George continues walking. The voice has complete control now. George disappears beneath the dark surface of the lake. Only ripples remain where he once stood. The family stares in horror at the empty water. The whispers fade, leaving only eerie silence. Days later, strange sounds echo from the lake at night. Some say they hear George's voice calling others to join him. The lake remains still and dark, but locals avoid it now. They know something evil lurks beneath its surface.